Good evening. I wanted to wrap up our last week and a half here at the General Assembly 2019 legislative session. Last week, we started off with a Virginia for All of Us press conference where I was part of a progressive coalition that outlined some very important bills that were coming up this session. I was able to talk about the Reproductive Health Equity Act, a redistricting criteria bill that I'm carrying, and also the work that I'm doing to help with Delegate Simon's bill about a borrower's bill of rights for those of us in Virginia that have student loan debt. Then we had an Equality Virginia press conference where I again was able to talk about the Reproductive Health Equity Act, because in there is a non-discrimination clause that would prevent the LGBTQIA plus community from being discriminated against when it comes to the insurance covering reproductive health care. From there, we had our Virginia Legislative Black Caucus press conference where we outlined our legislative priorities and some of the bills that we are carrying this year. And I talked a little bit about this year being the 35th anniversary of African American women serving in the General Assembly. 35 years ago, then Delegate Yvonne Miller first started serving in the House. She moved on to the Senate, and she served in the Senate until the day that she passed. And she really trailblazed for the other 18 of us to come behind her. There have been 19 total African American women who have served in either the Senate or the House of Delegates in Virginia. And just to put that into context, don't forget Virginia is turning 400 years old, and it's just been within the last 35 years that we've had African American women in the General Assembly, but we are working hard and fighting for our communities. We also had a visit from the STAR program, and those were students from Heritage High School that are participating in the mock trial program with the Commonwealth's attorney, Howard Gwynn, and his office. And it was just a wonderful trip. They got to come and see government at work. And so they were able to take a tour of the Capitol. We had a meeting with some of the other legislators that I work with who were able to talk about either their becoming lawyers or why they decided to serve in the legislature. And from there, they came into the House chamber and I introduced them from the floor during session. And then they went over to the executive branch to learn more about the other side of government. And they met with some of the governor's staff, to include Rita Davis, who is chief counsel to the governor and also the first woman to serve in that role. And then they were able to meet with our 73rd governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Dr. Ralph Northam, and had a great conversation with him. So they seem pretty excited. So I'm really hopeful that they enjoyed their time here. But it was a really great opportunity for them to see government at work and all of the ways that lawyers help the legislative process. We had a couple of deadlines that came up, and we submitted 14 bills and 2 joint resolutions along with 2 budget amendments. And so we'll be talking more about that. And if you follow me on social media, you will see that I'm starting to talk about some of those bills and the actions that we're taking on them in subcommittee and committee. One of those was a bill that I'm carrying with Hampton from the Hampton Police Department. And this is our 4th time, my 4th session, but also our 4th time trying to work on this, where public safety officials and first responders who have been exposed to someone else's bodily fluids can get the blood testing that they need in a timely manner in order to know what type of medicines they need to take to prevent exposure or developing diseases. And so we made a few changes to it after some really great conversation in the courts subcommittee, and then that passed out unanimously from the court subcommittee and will then go to the full courts committee, and that will be heard on Monday. And so we are hoping for another favorable result with that bill so that we can help protect our first responders and public safety officials. Then this week, we started off with a charter bill that came from Newport News. Newport News is newly formed City Council. That means the first meeting that they have the July after the May elections, where new people are elected to the City Council. They have their meetings at 10 o'clock, and a lot of people don't know why they have it so early in the day. And that's because it is in our charter. And in order to change our charter, we have to come to Richmond. And so I put in a bill for changing the charter so that the council can decide what time they want to meet, especially if they want to move it to the evenings in order to encourage more civic participation. So just so happened another delegate put in the exact same bill, and he happened to be more senior than me. So they incorporated my bill into his, but that also passed out unanimously from the subcommittee, and that will go to the counties, cities, and towns full committee, and hopefully we'll find another favorable vote. I know that you all remember in 2017 where we had the interesting election that resulted in a recount, and then there was a tie in the recount in the 94th district to get us to the infamous day of pulling a name out of a bowl in a film canister. So we became the butt of many jokes, but a lot of us found out that several states have this provision of deciding an election by lot if there's a tie in a recount. So I proposed a bill that would send it to a special election so that that power would go back to the people, so that their representation would be chosen by them or the majority of a vote as opposed to luck. And unfortunately, the Subcommittee of Privileges and Elections turned that bill down on a party line vote. So we'll continue to fight for that, because it really is important that our voices be heard in elections, and again, not our representatives being chosen by luck. Then with the City of Newport News, we presented a bill that would allow local law enforcement to provide or to process the required fingerprint background checks that child care programs need. And we know we have amazing child care programs in Newport News, and we want to make sure that the people that are working with those programs are heavily vetted. Well, in September, the Department of Social Services is going to stop paying for those fingerprint background checks. So we wanted to see if there was a more streamlined and also cheaper option for our localities. And so we were able to pass that bill out of the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee. So that will be coming to the floor of the House of Delegates for a vote very soon. No, I take that back. That was referred. It was passed from the House HWI committee, but it does come with a cost, and so that needs to be addressed in the budget. So it was referred to the Appropriations Committee. So we're waiting to hear when that hearing will be in the Appropriations Committee. And then I also proposed a bill that would allow for localities like Newport News or Hampton or county, cities, and towns to choose whether or not guns and ammunition were allowed in their buildings. And so my argument being that most of us, when we go to city council, we're dealing with a contentious issue, not because we're just showing up to congratulate someone for their hard work. So whether it be city council or any of the amazing workers that we have for both the cities of Newport News and Hampton, someone coming down to argue about an issue should not introduce intimidation and fear into the conversation by carrying a firearm. Unfortunately, that bill was also rejected by a subcommittee on a party line vote. But I do want to thank those that spoke up for the bill, including Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, and we appreciate his testimony in that all of the common sense legislation dealing with gun safety was rejected on a party line vote. And so we will continue to fight, but I do know that change is coming. And lastly, I just want to tell you about some of the visitors that we've had. It's always great to hear from advocates, especially constituents. So I met two constituents that came up, Izzy and Catherine, and they were with the Women's Equality Coalition. And so we talked about some of the bills that I am supportive of that they were advocating for. We also had some students from GMU come say hello. And then I saw some dentists from our area that I know and that have worked with my dad and know my dad with the Virginia Dental Association. So that was really cool. And then we had a special visitor today, Congressman Scott, the chair of the Education and Labor Committee. He came by to say hello, and I'll also include a video from that introduction from the House floor. But it's been a trying interesting and busy, fast paced week and a half, and we still have a lot of work to go. So that's my update so far, and we'll keep you posted on what's happening next week.